Good morning. Today we are talking about census data and how to complete household surveys for our LCDBG programs. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted on our website for future use. So the first step in determining what you need to do for your project, if it needs to be census data, a survey, or combined, is to determine what the target area is. So if you're doing a system-wide project, typically that coincides with municipalities, but it's not always the case if you're working in larger parishes. So it really depends on where you're working and the type of project that you're doing. But the thing to keep in mind is that each target area that you're doing has to have at least 51% low to moderate income persons. And that each target area, you'll do its own activity beneficiary form before you combine it, and then you'll label those. So you need to decide if you're using census data, survey, or both. So the thing to remember is that census data must be used if it's available. The census data can be found at the HUD Exchange at the website listed there. There's a breakdown for block groups and for municipalities. If the block group is at least 90% benefiting from the project, then you have to use census data. The only time that you wouldn't use census data is if you look at it and with the margin of error, it would put it over. So if the low to moderate income percentage of that block group is less than 51%, but if you add in the margin of error, it could put them over 51%, then we would allow you to complete a household survey in order to determine their LMI percentage. So the first thing we want to look at is census data. So assuming that you have a project that you can use census data for, whether that's all block groups or local government summaries, or so that'd be your municipalities. In this case, so you would click on those. This is the municipality one, so it's all local governments, and all of that is included right there on that spreadsheet. When you click on that, and after you filter it, you can find Louisiana. And I recommend also freezing a lot of this information. It's a very large and unwieldy spreadsheet. So, but this is all the municipalities in the state. It does also include unincorporated areas. So make sure that, you're looking at the right place. So in this example, I pulled up Abbeville. The columns that you want to look at are H, F, and I for this one. So H is the low mod universe. That means that's everyone in the city. And so that's your total number of persons. And then F is the low to moderate income people. And so to determine the percentage, you divide this by this. So 60% of the population is low to moderate income. When you're completing your application package, the activity beneficiary form is in the application. You can use that one, but it's not an Excel form. So if you want to use the one out of the household survey forms, you can. It is in Excel, so it's fillable, and it's a little bit easier that way. And some of it autofills. So I filled out this city of Abbeville, a PF 24. In this case, it's just system-wide. This is the total number of persons. And then you don't fill this in, and you don't fill in the above. When we look at census data, we ask that you enter everyone in the moderate line, and then the above is just subtracted out. So that calculates itself. And we don't want you to fill out any of the other portion of this form. We'll give you those numbers and let you review that to see if you agree. So again, this is the total number of persons from this column, column H, and then column F goes into the moderate. Now you'll notice that on the survey information from HUD, it said 60%. That's rounded. We use to the 100th on the decimal place. So we would divide that out ourselves and come out to 59.97%. But remember, we said that you can use the margin of error to determine if there's an option to survey. So in this case, Albany Village has 1,480 people total. 595 of those people are low to moderate income, and the percentage is 40.2, which would make them not eligible based on census data. However, the margin of error is plus or minus 12.90%. So we would allow them to survey the entire village in order to determine if they could meet the minimum threshold requirement of 51%. But that would, Albany Village might not be very big, but you know, even if you're getting up into cities, that could be a lot of people. So in case you're doing just block groups or target areas, and you need to see which block groups you could do census tracts, then you need to check your map. And this is how to do that, or how to determine which census tracts they are in block groups. So if you go to data.census.gov and then click on advanced search where the arrow is pointing right there, you can filter down. This has the instructions on it, which we'll also post on our website. Number 2, it says, or step 2, it says go to geography and then click place, Louisiana, and then you do your location and then click maps up here at the top. Hit filter, or then it changes to this map. I think at this point you could also enter the city at the top. That's why there's a map over of the western part of the US, but you could enter Abbeville in the search bar at the top, and I think it popped up right there. I filtered it out on the next one, but this is how it comes up if you don't do that ahead of time. And then from here, you'll have to scroll down on the right side under the boundaries. I did have to scroll a little bit and click both the census tract and the census block group, and that'll put up the boundaries of both of those so that you can see them when you're looking at your map. So I typed in Abbeville at the top. It put the place in it. You're going to click on the DP05. So that's what it got to. I still had to hunt on the map, and it was a little bit difficult trying to find it. I had to scroll in and out. It doesn't always have the names of the places, but it does have some, and it kind of flashes in and out. So you might have to be patient when you're looking at it, but you can get there eventually. On this, you can see, this is Abbeville, the city. You can see the outline of it. So in this case, these are the block groups that are showing, and the census tracts are the larger ones, like 9507. There's not much distinction between the lines of the census tracts and block groups, so sometimes you have to toggle them on and off to make sure that the line you're looking at is the right one. This is a little bit of a better version than a previous one, though. So these are the block groups. So you need to see where the work is being completed and which block groups would be included. And that's what we do when we get your application. We pull this up and we make sure that everywhere that you've listed is benefiting, and make sure that there's not something that we think that you should have included. It's really important that you work with engineers on this part of it to make sure that you're including everybody that needs to be. So remember, if at least 90% of the block group is benefiting, then you have to use census. If it's less than 90%, then you have to survey. So before, when we pulled up this web page, it had the ACS 5-year low to moderate income summary data, and it showed a line for block groups and a line for municipalities. So this, when you click on block groups, it goes to this page. And again, we're using the 2011 to 2015 at this time. That is current. The most current, it's not current, but it's the most current that we have. So let's say I wanted to do Abbeville and I picked out, or I went back to my census data and then I scrolled down to Vermilion Parish. Again, filters are really helpful because this spreadsheet is so big. So I filtered it down to Louisiana and then to Vermilion Parish. So you can see these are all the block groups and census tracts. So you just have to be careful and find the one that you're looking for. So in my example, I picked census tract 9507, block groups 3 and 4. So if work was being done there and it was at least 90% of both of those block groups, I would use both of these, and you're going to combine this information. So this is the universe, 345 plus 1540. And then the number of low to moderate income persons is J on this one. It's 250 and 805 added together. So, and then you would total those and enter them on the ABF. Make sure that you're labeling your target area. You can call it a name if it makes sense, depending on the municipality or area that you're working in. But it's also fine for us if it's just 1, 2, 3 or ABC, some distinguishing feature so that we can find it when we're looking at the map and the ABF together. So again, we're putting in that total number, 1885, and then we're entering the moderate number, 1195, and then it populated the 690 as long as you're using the Excel version. And then it comes out to 59.97%. So in the cases where you can't use census data, then you have to do a survey. So the next question is, are you doing 100% survey or sample size? And it really depends on the area that you're doing. If you're trying to, just do work on a small portion, then it might make more sense to just do 100% survey. If it's a larger survey, then yeah, you definitely need a sample size. And so this is the website that we use. It's surveysystem.com. So you would need to put in 95% for the confidence level. And this is the determined sample size part. That's all you're doing. There's a box below it that's something about find your confidence and interval. We don't need to do that. We're just determining our sample size. So figuring out how many people do we need to survey. So you put in the total population, which was 1885. I just made up, anyway, I just made that up. And the confidence interval 5 and confidence level 95%, and you hit calculate, and it shows 319 people or households. That's what you need to survey. You need to print this page out and include it in your application. The next step is to determine which order to enter or to survey those households. And so we go to random.org and you're entering the total number of households in the largest value. And then you put format in X number of columns. So we don't care, but if you have 1,885 and you put 1, you're going to get like 100 pages of just one line. So depending on how many it goes across, I would do at least 10 if it's a large number, but I think there was even room for more after that. But again, after you do this, you hit get sequence and you'll get this number or this page. print this out, save multiple copies of it. I'd save a PDF and then print out many, many copies. So it will never be duplicated, or it would be really hard to duplicate when you say that. And so you want to make sure that you have a record of this, because this is required in your application and you need it for when you're surveying households. So remember, on our example, you have to survey 319 houses. So when you get this, you can either go down or across. You just can't skip around. So typically people go down. And so you would count down until you got to 319 houses. So until you survey that many, wherever that is, and the ones that you are supposed to survey, those are the ones you need to survey. You can't just say, oh, they weren't home, I'm going to skip them and go do another one. You have to make at least 3 attempts at different times of the day trying to reach those people. So the first 319, those are the ones that are supposed to be included. If they're vacant, then you skip or go to the next one after that. You can add one. But we will check all of these. We check them very carefully to make sure that who you're counting, or that you are counting who needs to be counted. The survey forms, the survey package is on our website under applications and forms. It's on our information page as well. And then the HUD income limits is found on this website. You'll need to get the income limits for the parish where you're surveying households. And that can be found here. And that was the website on the previous slide. So you're going to be clicking on 2023. And then you'll select Louisiana and the parish where you're doing the survey. It's a little bit stretched out, but this is the survey form. This is the workbook. This is the first page of it. You can add or delete rows to this, but it can't be on the first line of the survey information or on the last. So click somewhere in the middle and you can add and delete rows as needed. It's pretty long, but it just depends on your need. This is a sample that I filled out just so you could see that this is what it's supposed to look like. Just a couple of notes. If they're or if they're vacant or unreachable or something else, or if it turns out to be, you numbered a house that turned out to be a business, you would make note of that in this comments column. The house number goes here, the street name there, and then so map key is next. So important to note that if you're doing a 100% survey, the map key column has to be in order. And if you're doing a random survey, it has to be in the order on your random sequence that you got. So it has to be in this order. The occupied house and surveyed house columns need to be filled out as applicable. You would only put a 1 or a 0 in both of those columns. Same for female headed household. If that's applicable to the situation, then you would put a 1. Owner and renter, I have a mistake because renter should actually only be a 1 too. A 1 also. So 1 or a 0 in all of these household columns, because it's just about the household. And so if you have something like a 2, it'll throw all the numbers off because that's where it's calculating from. So a 1 in all of these, or a 0, whichever one. You have to have some household income range marked. You have to have owner, renter. If it's not female headed household, you can leave it blank or you can enter a 0. It doesn't really matter to us. And then the racial data has to be entered. And this is where you enter the number of persons in the household under each race that applies to them. If they decline to say, you just use your best guess, is what I believe we've been told, so. If you're marking Hispanic, or if they say they're Hispanic, there has to be a race included as well. Hispanic is just an ethnic identity and not race, so both of those have to be included. If you just put a number in the ethnicity, then it doesn't calculate the number of persons. So you can see at the bottom, it totals up the number of persons, number of Hispanic persons, female-headed households, and then the low to moderate income information. If you are doing a project that involves new sewer or new water, the last column also needs to be completed. It needs to have an amount here, what the estimated monthly user fee would be, and then they need to have yes or no. In order for the project to qualify, at least 75% of the households surveyed have to say yes, that they want it. Once you have completed this form, you can go to the next tab, which is for projected households. So if you were doing a sample size. So if you're finished with this and you did 100% survey, you can put this straight to an activity beneficiary form. That's fine. But if you did a sample size, then you would go to the next tab, which is the projected occupied households. You would have to do this. It is really detailed. It tells you what to do, specifically the applicant, the target area, and you enter the population of the structures that you thought, whatever the numbers you numbered initially, you enter that there. Sometimes later you find out it was a church, it was a business, but at the beginning you didn't know that before you numbered, sometimes. And so you would enter that there. And then you enter how many households you surveyed, how many were not home, how many refused, how many were vacant, businesses exempt, which would be a church. And then this shows the total number of survey attempts. And then it populates all of this. And then the directions say, enter this number on the survey tabulation form as the answer to number 2. It's the total occupied houses in the target area. This is a big error that people have sometimes, but it's this number right here on number 2. And then you would fill out the rest, and the rest of this form. From the survey tabulation form, you go to the activity beneficiary form. So once you have this, which is just a total of your survey, once you have this, you enter it here and it will populate over to the ABF. The low to moderate income stays the same. Even if you're projecting the total number of people, that LMI percentage doesn't change. This is the final ABF. Again, the rehabilitation loans and grants. This side is for projects that have work being done on private property, whether that's new connections or if work is being done to make repairs that are on private property. So for new, it's a little bit easier to determine how many people that you think it's going to be. For rehabilitation, when they're making repairs, it's hard to say at the beginning or impossible to say. Just kind of your best guess based on how many houses and where you think the problems are. Work with your engineer. We are really flexible about that. We just need something to enter and we'll get it reconciled at the end of the project. It's fine. These are ways to avoid common mistakes. So if the survey is random, make sure to place the surveys in the order of the random number survey or generated. So that's your sequence that you got from random.org. Make sure that it follows that order. If the survey is 100%, you place them in numerical order so that we can see that you did 100%. Again, if the project involves new hookups, make sure that you're completing that last column. Double check the number of the houses on the maps. This is the biggest problem that we have by far on surveys, especially large surveys. When people are numbering maps where the work is being done, and sometimes those go up into the hundreds, it's very easy to skip a number or to write a number twice. So check those twice when you're doing them, and maybe have somebody come along and count behind you, because we will. Two people will. And so sometimes maybe even one person doesn't catch it, but somebody else will. And then you'll have to redo your survey. And if it's a random household survey, then you'll have to redo a very large portion of it. So just make sure that those are correct. Make sure that you're using the income limits for the correct parish or municipality. It's really parish in this case. Sometimes, I think sometimes they're just included because consultants are doing multiple applications, but just make sure that you're using the right one and including the right one in your application. Make sure that you are printing and saving multiple copies of the random number sequence. And this is a big one too. For system-wide projects, make sure that you're verifying that all beneficiaries are included inside the corporate limits. If it's a citywide system, I know, again, sometimes they're outside in parishes, so they don't always correspond with municipalities. But if it does, make sure that there's not anyone outside. If there are, it's completely fine. You just have to survey those people and combine it with your census data. So you just do one ABF for your census, and then you would survey those people outside, just a small survey workbook. It's usually not a large area, 5, 10, 20 houses. And then you do a survey workbook for those, and then you would add them together. So you would have a combined ABF. But just double check that, because we are always going to ask when it's a system-wide, a system-wide project that's in a municipality. We just want to make sure that that's, that we're counting everybody. Make sure that the total number of occupied households is correct. That's what we said, from going from the survey tabulation form to the activity beneficiary form. Like you would enter that number for the projected, on the projections sheet, sorry, not the survey tab, to ABF. You're entering that correct number. The low to moderate income percentage doesn't change when going from the survey tab to the ABF. And don't leave that rehab loans and grants column blank if you're going to have work done on private property. If households need to be surveyed, like if you're doing 100% survey, then you can't have a refused or unreachable or not home. If you're saying you're going to survey all of them, then all of them have to be surveyed. You can have a vacant if that's the case, but you can't be like, well, we didn't get that one, but we did all the other 24 houses, so it's fine. It's not fine. You have to have all of them.